Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video we're going to take a look at operators. So you're going to notice a couple things. One, I'm in Sublime Text now as opposed to the command prompt, and that's because I want to get you used to using Sublime since we're going to be using it so much. We won't use the command prompt a whole lot more through this tutorial series. We'll probably use it later on a handful of times, maybe even in the other video series when we're talking about things like binary and hexadecimal numbers. But for right now, all you're going to be using is Sublime. So your Sublime should have been set up. If it's not set up, then you need to go back to those tutorials, setting up your environment, and go through those, and then come back here. And once it's set up, you need to make sure that your build system is set to Python 3.4. And once that's ready to go, then everything should be just fine. Okay, now if you have this up and running and you're trying to get things to actually work, you might have noticed if I do something like 5 plus 5 and I run the program, now there's two ways you can run it. And going tools, build is going to get really old really fast. So most people, when they get used to programming, they're just using shortcuts for everything. So in this case, Control B is what you want. So Control B will run the program. You'll still see nothing but this down here, finished in 0.1 seconds. If your computer's really slow, you'll see finished in 0.2 or 0.3 seconds. You also notice that if you do type something, let's say I do print hello here, and I then run it, nothing prints out. And that's because you haven't saved. And you can tell you haven't saved because there's this little dot here. It's actually, I think, an asterisk, but very, very small on my screen. So if I save by going File, Save, and then I run, it'll print out hello. But you don't want to be doing File, Save all the time, so use the shortcut, Control S. So you got Control B and Control S. So on your keyboard, Control S, Control B, and it'll run it for you. Okay, so let's go back and talk about operators. So you know what an operator is because you've been using them in your math class ever since you were a little kid. You've addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Those are operators. In programming though, there are a ton more operators, a whole bunch of stuff that you've never even seen before. And we'll get to those in the next couple videos. But right now, we're just going to look at some things you're used to, and then a couple things that might be new to you. Okay, so I'm going to create a few variables here. I'm going to say A10, B5, C1, D, -1. So now I've got some variables. So let's use our basic operators and let's actually do some, I don't know, do some stuff here. So we got print A plus B is going to give me 15. You also notice I got these things popping up here. This is kind of like helpful hints saying, hey, this is a print function. It'll tell you what to do here. You can just ignore it for the most part. So I say I have A times B minus C. Okay, it gives me 49, or print. You can actually use parentheses inside parentheses. So let's go ahead and do that. D let's do D plus A, and then minus B. Okay, 85. Go ahead and use some division stuff. A divided by B times C minus, I don't know, A. Okay, negative 2.0. And you notice everything comes down here, it prints out everything, and then finishes. So the way the code runs is it runs from the top straight to the bottom. When it gets to an end of a file, the program just stops. All right. So this is really nothing special. You should be used to doing this stuff. This is just basic math. One of the things you will notice, which is kind of handy, is here, as I move my cursor, you see these underlined. It actually shows you your matching parentheses. So if you've got a really, a lot of deeply nested stuff in here, let's do plus, I don't know, A times A. You can actually tell just by clicking these to see if you have reached the right number of parentheses. Now, if I run this, I'll get an answer. But let's say I take one of these off. So I take this off and I run. The error you're going to get is unexpected end of file. So EOF means end of file. Parsing means it's trying to take the code apart and run it for you. So if I do this, this is called a syntax error. And a syntax error is you made a mistake while typing. So if you see syntax error, it's probably your fault. There's some error that you made while you were typing the code. And in this case, it's because I'm missing one of these. So here and here, I've got these, but I need one right here. So I'm matching this one. So let's put it back in, run it, and the error goes away. Okay, so those are your basic operators. All right, I'm gonna leave those there. I'm gonna skip a line, and I'm gonna come down here, and I'm gonna show you another operator. We've seen this already. This is power of, so a to the power of b, or 10 to the power of 5. If I run this, I get 100,000. So it's 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Yep, that's right. Okay. We saw another way of doing this though when we were using the functions. I could also do a and b, and I'll get the same answer down here. So a times b equals the same thing as power a to the power of b. I'm going to delete this because I want to show you a function inside a function again. So let's say I say a times b times, I don't know, let's do b again. So actually no, let's do d. Okay. So if I run this, I get this decimal here. How would I write this line so it does the same thing as this line? So I'm actually doing the same thing two different ways. So if I do print power, now I know how to do AB, but if I wanted to do now this part, how do I do it? Well, you have to put another function in here, B and D, and that is this line number 9 is the same as line number 10. So if I run this code, I will get the exact same answer. Okay. So that's just there's lots of ways to do things when you're programming, and I think that's actually one of the nice things about code is that unlike math class, oftentimes when you're doing a math problem, there's one way to solve a problem, or there's one way that's the really good way to solve the problem. There might be a handful of other ways, but with code, there are uncountable ways to solve the problem. You can solve it in so many different unique ways that it actually makes sometimes a really simple problem kind of cool to look at. Okay. So let's get rid of these. We're going to look at two other operators which I find can be handy sometimes, but I don't use them too often. I use one more often than the other. So let's take a look. I'm gonna give you some examples, and then I'm gonna let you figure out what's going on. So I'm gonna do 10, 3. I'm gonna copy this line 3 times, and I'm gonna put 20 and 30 here. Okay, and then I'm gonna run this code. So I've got 10 and 3, 23, and I get 3, and then I get 20 and 3 and 6 and 30 and 3 and 10. So doing that, 10 and 3 gives me 3. So if it's division, you could probably kind of figure out what's going on here. If I got 10 divided by 3, well, 3 goes into 10 3 times, and there's no remainder. So 10 divided by 3 is 3 as a whole number, and I get 3, and then 6, same thing here. 3 times 6 is 18, and of course 3 fits evenly into 30 10 times. Now, what's another way of doing this same computation? We've actually learned a way already that I could do this and come out with 3. So if I do 10 and I want to come out with 3, I want to divide by 3 and come out with that. So think back to what we did in the variables videos, because we learned something in the variables and functions rather. We learned something in the functions, and it was int. And if I do 10 divided by 3, I should get 3.3333333. But if I change it to an integer, it should round down to 3. So let's see what I get. And I do, 3 and 3. And you can do the same thing here. Notice when int pops up, there's this huge thing, converts a string or number to an integer if possible. A floating point argument will be truncated towards 0. This does not include a string representation, blah, 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 blah. So actually, that pops up a whole bunch. I might turn that off in a little bit, but it can be really useful for you when you're doing things. So let's do that. And of course, I get 6. So pretty cool. It's an interesting operator, but not something you're going to use all the time. Now this other operator is actually used a lot in different parts of programming, and actually used a lot in math in general. Open. Okay. So this operator is actually used a lot in math in general. This is called the modulus operator. Modulus. I actually made a different comment there. I'm used to that / from Java and stuff, but the hash sign here is modulus. So this is actually a comment. This little hash mark means comment. It won't run this code. If I took this off and tried to run, I'd get an error. Name error. No such thing as modulus. But if I put this here, it runs just fine. So let's check out the answers I got. I got 1, 2, and 0. And if you remember the operator we just did, the double division, this is kind of its opposite, I guess you could say, in a way. Instead of giving us the number that the answer to the division problem, it gives us the remainder to the division problem. So here I've got 10 modulus 3, or 10 mod 3, gives me 1 because 3 goes into 10 3 times with 1 left over. And same thing here, 3 goes into 20 6 times with 2 left over, which is 2, and then 3 goes evenly into 30, which leaves me with 0 left over. So it's just the remainder of a division problem. So that's modulus. Okay. All right. That's really about it for the basic arithmetic stuff. In the next couple videos, we'll do a whole bunch more with operators, and you'll see just how powerful Python can be when it comes to that stuff. Okay. All right. See you in the next video.